Well, we are officially 2 days away from the 2025 MLB Draft, and the Orioles have 4 picks. Pick 19, 30, 31, and 37. But I am joined and very excited to be here with Assistant GM and Vice President Sig Mejdal. Sig, thanks so much for taking the time.
Happy to be here, Annie.
So I mentioned those 4 picks, and that 4th one came a little bit close to right now in a trade yesterday with the Rays for in exchange for Brian Baker. What does it mean for you guys to have 4 picks relatively early on and close together?
Yeah, the biggest thing is that we got one more stab and we'll get one more of the top 30-ish players in our country. And that is good news for the Orioles of the future. And
for the kind of value that the 4th pick brings, and now the Orioles too in general are just at the top of all MLB teams for bonus pool amounts, what does that say to you guys in terms of flexibility and navigating those 4 picks and beyond?
Yeah, it's true. It gives you a little bit more flexibility. You could get a little bit more creative with some of the draft dynamics. But again, like the biggie is that we got one more of the best 30 players in the country, and that by far is the advantage of that.
Do you view these 4 picks, I mentioned that flexibility, do you view them as, okay, we're going to go out and try and get different players because we have 4 shots now, or is it kind of just best player available for each one?
I think whether you got 1 pick, 4 picks, whether it's your last pick, your goal is still the same, and it's to take the best available player. They're going to be put into our low minor leagues. They're going to join players from other drafts, and after a couple of years, you'll forget exactly what draft or where they came from, and it's all really just trying to get the best player to help the Orioles out here.
Now, for good reason, this Orioles team hasn't necessarily been drafting earlier on in the draft in the first round the last couple of years, but there has been some success with this organization in drafting later on in the first round and even beyond, like Gunnar Henderson, Jordan Westburg. What does that kind of precedent for you guys tell you in terms of confidence for these later picks?
Yeah, you know what? I'd like to think that we're strong and our decision-making processes are good throughout the draft, but you're right. We have had a couple hits in this area, so I'm with you. Let's imagine a few more hits coming in the future.
Last year, before the 2024 draft, you mentioned that you kind of like, with your draft process, having some sense of modesty. Can you elaborate more on that, and do you still feel the same way?
Yeah, I definitely feel the same way. I think being involved in the draft is not the best fit for an overconfident human being. And the draft will humble you. There's still so much variability, so much of the future of what becomes of these players that we can't figure out on draft day. And so much of it is an exercise in squeezing all the information we can and making the best decision we can, and then letting real life take it from there.
And you are a big stats guy, and the Orioles are a very model-based team, but when it comes to that kind of unpredictability and mystery with drafting these players, how do you use statistics and the models to prepare the Orioles for draft day?
Yeah, I think it's probably not too different than what many teams do. We have a collection of scouts, we have a collection of analysts, and we are trying to put these thousands of amateur baseball players in the right order. So you're going to have some sort of model to make sense of that all. And yes, of course, some of the information we use comes from their college performance. Much of it comes from the scouting grades. And so to some degree, there is an exercise in mathematics and how to best combine this information in order to put these guys in the right order.
Now, the models and the numbers and the tools are all very important part of this draft process, but at the same time, there's also the intangibles, the work ethic, the ball player mentality, and instincts. How much weight do you guys put on that kind of makeup of a player, and how do you measure it as well?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and by very good question, I mean it's a difficult one to answer. So certainly, we could see the importance of work ethic, of growth mindset, of how the players handle failure. That undoubtedly is important. But what the challenge is getting an idea of those traits before we draft them. And that is challenging. I wish we had a growth mindset, work ethic, how you're going to handle failure-o-meter, and we could attach it to the players and find out beforehand, but we don't. But neither do any of the other clubs, and so we're all in a similar boat that we're doing our best with our scouts. We're doing our best talking to their coaches. We're doing the best keeping our ear out, what the players are saying about them, what players or personnel close to them are saying. But it still is, in some ways, unsatisfying, and there still are a lot of surprises in this all-important trade.
Now, with this draft class specifically, it isn't necessarily very top-heavy, and there is a lot of talent deep into the draft. Matt Blood mentioned that makes it more difficult for you guys come the range of your picks. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. I think having one pick in this range is a lot different than having 4 picks. And so we have an idea of when we're entering the area of players that may be around for this pick, but now it's these picks. And so every player we rank in that area is just a different animal than in a typical year. The amount of time we're ruminating, the discussions we're having are all directed at getting this specific area as right as we can before the draft starts.
Now, those discussions that you're having, I'm sure there's plenty of them in the war room right upstairs. Can you take me into the environment of the war room on draft day?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's hard to describe. I think I've been in so many of them. I don't know what others' expectations are, but I mean, it's not a war room. There's no war going on. It's a decision-making room, and if you've done things right, you already have the players in order, and there's very little you need to do. Now, there's a lot that changes in the draft with player signability, players who fall that you may not have planned for, but if you've done your homework, and that's what Matt Blood speaks about. If you've done your homework, you have the players in order, and it just becomes the draft dynamic of who happens to be at the top of your board when it's your time to pick.
Right, just being ready for when it's your time. But the last question I want to ask you is, what is your favorite part about draft day?
Yeah, I love you brought up, I have a background in analytics, so I love the challenge and the exercise in combining all the information we have from disparate sources, from our experts who go and see the player in person multiple times, from the biological information to the on-field performance, and it's information sources that are as different as could be, but the goal is clear. It's combining these things that exist in different currencies, trying to put them in the same currency, and then order based on that currency.
Awesome. Well, Sig, thank you so much, and best of luck for the busy weekend ahead.
Thank you, Annie.